Sennheiser, again, HD660S versus Sennheiser HD600s, and also the 650s, 6XX, and the 58X based off of memory. Now, it wasn't too long ago that I listened to the 6XX and the 58Xs, so as far as they go, their comparison and their place in this video is going to be more of a quick reference rather than a detailed explanation of what I'm talking about. So do keep that in mind, but I wanted to include that extra information there just so that you, the viewer, can have a better understanding of what it is that I mean and how exactly it compares to it more or less. So first of all, shout out to Silent once again. Thank you for lending me these and helping the channel grow. Again, his gram will be down in the description. You can check that out. I don't know what exactly he does there, but he does a lot of cool stuff, and you might want to look at pictures because maybe that's your thing. Okay, let's begin with what it comes with. Both of them have this really nice inner box. Very, very nice. As you can see, I put a speaker stand attached to it, and I use it as sort of a podium so that I can keep these looking nice and pretty when I'm not using them. Now, HD600s only come with the stock single-ended cable. It's a very nice cable at that. It terminates an 1/8 inch and then has an adapter to transform it to 1/4 inch. And I really like that. Where on the flip side here, this comes with 2 cables, okay? The Pentagon cable, the termination that nobody uses just yet, but I feel it will catch on maybe a few years down the line when people have more devices that have this accessibility and this type of termination. So might want to keep that stored for a couple of years because it may come in handy for you. Or who knows, if you already have something for this, good for you. Now the difference here is that the stock cable ends in 1/4 inch and then has an adapter for 1/8 inch. Well, still convenient, but just not quite as convenient as this alternative, because here you remove something to be able to use the other function rather to use it mobily rather than adding something to use it mobile. So that's definitely a plus for the HD600 and its stock cable. Now keep in mind they both end in 2-pin connectors, so if you want, you can buy one of these off of eBay or Amazon and then use those on the 660S or any other Sennheiser in the HD600 line that you may have. So that's something to consider. However, that is an extra cost. Now, build quality. Both of them are pretty much the same, same kind of build quality. You got the plastic, pretty much made out of plastic, but it does have metal every now and then, every here and there, including there in the headband for more rigidity and stability. This goes the same way for the 660S. Exact same thing. However, the paint job on the 660S is a new thing. It's a matte black, which is going to prevent any nicks and scratches that have occurred to the paint. Pay no attention to these nicks and scratches. Remember, these are used, so who knows what kind of treatment the previous owner gave to these. Whereas these are my babies. They look exactly the same as when I took them out of the box. Almost 6 to 8 months ago, something like that. I've taken pretty good care of them, and they still function exactly like they do. Now, back to my point. The grills. The grills here are flat. They have everything. It's all normal. No designs, no anything. It's just a little, roll off there into the shape of the headphone. Man, I cannot talk today. Ugh. Whereas here, it has the logo of the Sennheiser brand embedded into it right there. And on the outer rims over here of the driver, you can see that it's sort of a bump. A nice little, you can definitely feel it with your thumb or your finger if you run it across like this. Definite points to the HD660S for build quality there. Because of the build quality here, there's a little bit of a difference. Again, I'm not sure if it's because it's used or something, but these are like a little... they're a little more flexible. The joints pivot a little more. And that's pretty nice, given the fact that it makes comfort seem a little better than these. Just because these adjust to the shape of your head more naturally than these. With these, you have to use your hands to manually put it at a place where you find comfortable and rotate it using your hands because they are more stiff and rigid. However, that can be seen as a pro in of itself for long-term longevity. Amping, 300 ohms versus 150 ohms. Well, let me tell you something here. I could run both of these off of my smartphone. However, these will sound better off of a smartphone just because they require less power than these. Now, the difference isn't like night and day. It isn't exactly a 2-to-1 ratio here in terms of power, but there is a difference. There's a significant 1 to 2 o'clock difference on an amp, so keep that in mind. That, however, also means that when you amp these, they scale a lot better than these do. I ran both of these through single-ended, and I got to tell you that, yeah, these scale a lot better than these do. But on the flip side, you can argue that these reach their maximum potential much easier than these do. So, two sides of a coin. You can argue which might be a better trait to have, but they certainly have them. Now, let's jump into sound quality here. Let's start with bass. Sennheisers, they have that nice slam. That it's not a big punchy bass. It is just it's a very tight, very, very controlled HD600s, by the way, 600s. Very controlled, very snappy slam, very fast bass. And that's something I really, really love for, honestly, any type of genre. It's never failed me. Whereas with the HD660S, it has this kind of like slow, thick, honey-like bass that just doesn't quite sit right with me. To be specific here, let me just to clarify here in the bass. I would go 600s, 58X, 6XX, 660S. 600s just have the fastest, the cleanest, the clearer bass, the snappiest. 58X get similar to that, but still have a little bit of warmth there. However, they have much better bass extension than pretty much the rest of the three. And that definitely gives it an edge in the bass department. They're certainly not slow in the bass. 6XX are slow in the bass. However, that slowness, you can attribute that to like a lush, warm, but juicy bass. It's just very, very relaxing bass, yet still very textured and detailed. Here, it's also slow, it's also thick, but it's not very textured and detailed. It's just kind of like they forgot about the bass. Like it just doesn't exist anymore. Like they just forgot about it. They didn't want to pay attention to it. The mids. 600s, 6XX, 58X, 660S. 600s have the most forward mids, and that can be seen as either a pro or a con. However, I see it in this case as a pro because when you buy a headphone from the HD600 line, what you're looking for is that clarity in vocals. That's what the bread and butter of the HD600 line tends to be, other than to be a very, very neutral headphone. It's the vocals. And with these, it's where they stand out the most. Vocals have the most detail, the most texture, the most grain, I guess you could say, but not grain in a bad way where it sounds shrill. Just more grain, as in you definitely hear a distinction in the sound. In vocals, you can hear extra nuances, whereas with these, the vocals are just slightly forward above neutral, and they're not quite as detailed as the rest in the line, as I have heard. 6XX are a little less forward than these. However, their vocals are very smooth. They're smooth, but they don't lose that detail and those qualities to them that they have. So, and that's a definite +1 for the 6XX. Once again, I want to apologize. I cannot talk today. I don't know what it is. Okay. But I'm here. I'm doing this for you. Now the highs. 600, 6XX, or 58X, depending on your preference. And then 660S. Why? The 600s have no veil, or if anything, it's such a slight veil that you can't even call it a veil. You can just call it a slight preference. The 58X had no veil either, but they were not quite as fun as these are. They did not really shine with their potential. They kind of just presented it to you very formally, very, very businesslike. Like, this is what it is, nothing else to it. And these are a little more energetic, a little more jolty, I guess you could say. 6XX, yes, they are rolled off, just like the 660S. However, the amount of detail that is located in the highs is sufficient. It is clear enough and has good enough resolution that you don't feel like you're missing anything. You just kind of lack that little bit of air that you get from the 600s. However, it's not a massive lack of air. Whereas with the 660S, all detail is just gone. I mean, where did the detail go? It's just... The 6XX, I almost feel, are a little brighter than the 660S. I can't understand why they went this direction when it is very clear to see that neutrality and, if anything, an ever so slight brightness is what their bread and butter has been. So I don't understand the move made here, but it's a preference. Now the soundstage. 660S/650s over the 58X over the 600s. Why? Because these and the 66X have the widest soundstage, and whether that's a good thing or not is up to you. However, the fact that they have the wide soundstage allows for better separation between instruments. And this is very clear to see in the 660S and the 6XX, where you can certainly hear that better separation where it's not here on the left necessarily, it's close to you, it's farther to you, it's exactly here, it's up here. They're a little more detailed. They have slightly better imaging than 600s and the 58X do, just due to that extra soundstage that allows them to separate instruments a little better. That is what I've heard. Now, although these are narrow, the most narrow of the bunch, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's a preference thing. And as far as imaging goes, they are still excellent for imaging. Not a one from this line is bad at imaging. They're not. They're all great. However, that extra soundstage just makes them this much greater. Overall, I gotta restate that I'm just a little disappointed in the offering that Sennheiser had this time. It's just, really? You had the ability to make, say, Super 600s or Super 650s, and then these were supposed to be it, but they're just not. They're just darker 650s with equal to slightly less detail. Honestly comparable to the 58X Jubilees, quite honestly. So here's my overall opinion. 600s, 6XX or 58X depending on your situation. 660S. Absolutely. Just definitely, there is no reconsidering this opinion. That is 100% my opinion, and I doubt it will ever change. So, the 58X offer the best price to performance if you do not have an amp and do not plan on getting an amp. 6XX have the best price to performance if you already have an amp or you plan on getting an amp. HD600s, in my opinion, are the best overall. They are my babies, and they are so good. Offer so much detail, so much air, neutrality. They're very close to perfect. Very close to perfect, but they do not offer the best price to performance. However, in my opinion, if you do want the best of the best that the HD600 line has to offer, spending that extra $100 for brand new between what Massdrop offers, $200 for the 6XX, and $300 what Amazon offers for the 600s, I think it's worth it if you want that different sound signature and you want the best of the best that the 600 line has to offer. And then you have these. Please don't get these. Now, even at $300, if you get these used or even new off of someone for $300, don't. Just get these. Get the 600s. I can't wrap my head around how are these the worst of the bunch, arguably, when they're the priciest of the bunch. I can't understand. I just can't. I wish my review wasn't so negative here. I wish I could have said, well, these certainly do have something interesting to offer. They hold their own in this category, that category. No. What were their pros? The comfort that HD6XX and 58X have to offer. Soundstage, the 6XX offer pretty much the same soundstage, but better resolution, and they have a more comfortable listen while still maintaining equal to better detail. Is it the priciness because someone told you that these sound like 600s? They do not sound like 600s. Get 600s if you want 600s. Don't get 660S if you want 600s. Anyway, once again, thank you to Silent for lending these to me and allowing me to clear my doubts on whether I needed to upgrade to the 660S or not, because, well, now I feel better. I'm going to place these on an even higher pedestal than I did before.